Well, that was a dud, huh? Yeah, Did it work? I don't think it worked. I don't see it anymore. Maybe it's because it's already at the moon. Think about how much money did this lose them. I bet it lost them over $1 billion.
Yeah, I agree. It's 5 billion.
All the lunar plans and ruins.
Elon Musk, so his is maybe a bit more.
The radar on the coast. Oh my God, it was that bad? Holy shit! It's like the beginning of Fallout.
No, I don't think that's a rocket launch.
200 to 300 tons of TNT explosion equivalent, seen far away as Sarasota. One of the largest rocket explosions ever occurred. Oh, if you turn over to your left, you'll see that Jeff Bezos' rocket just got blown up. I will tell you this, though. Imagine the hype for the next one. At least he's in the record book now? Yeah, I guess so. Damn, dude, bro, that looks like the fucking eclipse. Holy shit, that looks badass. And that's the sound wave. This completely takes Blue Origin out of the Artemis picture for the next 12 months, most likely. All those moon-based missions, man, it's bad.
The explosion destroyed the rocket and tore apart the launch pad. The transporter erector and one of the two 600-foot lightning towers are gone. The flame diverter collapsed into the trench, and the closest towers are heavily damaged. The rocket alone cost more than $100 million, and it gutted a launch complex that cost over $1 billion to build, with repairs likely to take more than a year.
New Glenn explosion in nuke map for scale, the largest rocket explosion in American history. Is Katy Perry okay? So Jeff Bezos even tweeted about this. All personnel are safe and accounted for. It's too early to know what the root cause was, but we're already working to find it. Very rough day, but we'll rebuild whatever needs rebuilding and get back to flying. It's worth it. It's a rough road to the stars. That's about right. I think this is the best, most alpha response that you can possibly give. You are going to have backslides. You are going to have mistakes. You're going to have failures. There are so many ways something like this can go wrong. And ultimately, I don't think that there's anything wrong with them trying to do their best to put out a rocket and to do whatever they possibly can. It's a game of ladders. It is.
The number one criticism that I've heard, it's unfair because it only applies to Arabs.
It's my friends are...
Because that's a requirement of international law. It goes back to the Fourth Geneva Convention. Open up the convention, and they'll see there in Article 66 that only non-political military courts can be established in areas such as Judea and Samaria.
You're British.
Had he been
by the way,
a rigger, yeah.
It's trial in New York.
By the way, apparently I'm friends with someone who is like
people. He brought down the World Trade Center, injured X amount. You know
the larger the number means more rank.
Subject to the death sentence.
Okay,
sorry, I don't know. I don't want.
With Lieutenant Colonel Reserve Maurice Hirsch.
I was thinking I'll go.
Yeah, so why don't you just quick couple sentences tell us exactly who you are, what you do, and what we're going to be talking about.
So my background is law and military law. I'm a prosecutor, ex-prosecutor in the IDF. I was the head of the prosecution for Judea and Samaria for a few years, and previously served there also as a prosecutor, head of the appeals department. I now have retired from the IDF some 9 years ago, and I work in a think-do tank, the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs, and we work on different policies. My field is Palestinian Authority, accountability and reform, and within that, dealing with the whole subject, considering my background, is terrorism. How do you fight terrorism? How do you effectively combat terrorism? Cutting it off from its roots, and then dealing with terrorists when you've caught them as well.
500.
Yeah, so this is something as an American. Yes, I served in the U.S. military for about 12 years, U.S. Navy, almost 12 years. And so, you know, little bit of a different mindset, but still I understand how Americans think. It's a little different, especially those that maybe have never even traveled to the Middle East or maybe not even outside of their state. And so one of the big topics right now in America that the people that love to talk about Israel, which seems to be a lot of people nowadays, is the new death penalty law. What's it called officially?
It's called the death penalty for terrorists.
For terrorists.
For terrorists.
So it's for terrorists. You're not executing 10,000 Palestinians tomorrow.
It's not even that. It's only for murderers, for terrorist murderers. There's now a new provision that says, until now, I have to put
actually I have them.
Always had the death sentence.
The white.
Right? We had it for
highest white now. Then the highest.
Murder as a crime which carried the death sentence.
Assisting
the enemy during a time of
war. Why is the British accent
particularly relevant? Because the new law that was passed just a few weeks ago is obviously only forward-looking. It only applies from the day that it was passed and onwards. the hope is that that law will never be used. It was designed as a deterrent, and if no terrorist comes along to murder and wantonly murder Jews, then it will never be used. There will never be the death sentence.
I didn't know that.
However, the death sentence on the law that death sentence and those provisions will be relevant for the participants in the October 7 massacre. Have to take that into account. On October 7, thousands of genocidal terrorists invaded Israel, murdered, raped, tortured, burnt houses, beheaded people, put babies in ovens. Some of those terrorists were caught alive, and they will be tried, and if found guilty of those crimes, will potentially be sentenced to the death sentence. That's something which we'll have to see going on down the line, but that's because of the provisions that already existed in Israeli legislation prior to October 7th.
So for the people, the October 7th, like Nakba terrorists, they will possibly see the death sentence because of the prior provisions prior to this. Okay, understand. And then for the one that was just passed, it's for, future.
It's only for the future. And so the new law comes and fills in a lacuna that we did have, which is if you carry out a murder as part of a terrorist act, previously you couldn't necessarily be susceptible to the death sentence, and now it's being added on. Why is that coming up? Now, it's coming for a number of reasons, because we've seen Palestinian terrorism. I have to understand specifically Palestinian terrorism. It's promoted by the Palestinian Authority. It's not only the genocidal terrorists in Hamas, it's the PA, it's the so-called moderates who every day incite violence. They push their population into hating Jews and desiring to murder Jews. They have schools named after a woman called Dalal Mughrabi. No one knows who Dalal Mughrabi is. No one cares. Who is she? She was a terrorist who murdered 37 people in 1978. The Palestinian Authority has schools named after this terrorist. And they asked the children, well, how does it feel studying in the school of Dalal Mughrabi? And they say, we want to be like her. That's their aspiration in life. They then literally...
That's what it is. Okay, then.
Their mouth is. They have a multi-billion-dollar program to pay financial...
with Parliament is... I don't know. That's not what I thought.
To people who murder Jews.
This is the Pay for Slave program.
Pay for Slave program. Yeah. Imagine having an institutional program anywhere in the world where you incentivize the murder of, God forbid, people of color.
Right.
Who would ever tolerate that? Murder a person of color and you'll get paid a reward. That's exactly what the Palestinian Authority has. They have a policy, murder a Jew, get rich.
And this is the moderate Palestinian organizations. This isn't even the one we hear about in the news as much.
These are ostensibly the good guys. These are the people who are being funded by the European Union, even to a certain extent by the US government.
Right.
And so you have this drive to terrorism, drive to murder Jews. And once you've murdered Jews, what happens? Until now, you sat in jail, ostensibly, and I stood in court. As I explained, I was a prosecutor for many years in the courts that dealt with terrorists, and I sent hundreds of people to life sentences, sometimes to multiple life sentences. In 1 year alone, I think it was 2005, there were 561 life sentences handed down to the terrorists who had murdered people. Imagine that. Mass terrorism. And what happens to these people? How many of them have actually died of old age in prison? Zero.
I'm happy that there exists people.
Once you kidnap Israelis, you can then force the Israeli government to release these mass murderers. So it started in the 1970s. One terrorist kidnaps an Israeli, release one terrorist. It grew all the time to the Shalit deal in 2011, where Israel released 1,077 terrorists for one soldier.
Wow. I found it always interesting because a lot of Americans don't know about this, and it's forcing us to actually look more into. And I always found it interesting that every time Palestinians kidnap Israelis to try to exchange babies, women, civilians for mass murderers, terrorists, a lot of them, you know, they really try so hard to fight to get Israel to release the worst of the worst. And I always found it interesting because the pro-Palestinians, I've been talking about this for about 5 years, but when, you know, I first started kind of really learning about Israel, a lot of pro-Palestinians would come up on my lives, talk to me, and say that it was always about, like, trying to fight for, like, the women and children. And I was like, then how come they never ask for the women and children back first, and then maybe try to get the Sinwars? They always try to get the Barghoutis and the Sinwars.
Oh, so it isn't.
I found that kind of interesting. What do you,
It is a big deal.
Why, Nico, I understand the sensitivities of women and children. Does the person who was murdered understand that?
Right.
Does the person who was murdered by a 15-year-old care about the fact that he was 15? Amna Muna. Don't know if you've heard the name. She was just an evil, evil woman. She enticed a 17-year-old Israeli with sex, with the offer of sex, to come to Ramallah, where she and her friends then murdered her. I stood in court with this. You know, you have sometimes that feeling where you walk into a room and you can sense the evil. Yes. Amna Muna was one of them. Amna Muna was released.
It's like Dead Eyes.
She was going to be released to Gaza, but because of her questionable morals, she decided, I don't want to go there. I want to go to Turkey. So she's running around in Turkey.
She thought she didn't feel safe in Gaza.
Ahlam Tamimi. No one, a nice woman, very sweet woman. She's in Jordan now. She's a television broadcaster. She was the one who chose the place for the Sbarro pizza shop massacre in 2001. Second Intifada, August 2001. She chose the place for the suicide bombing. She led the suicide bomber into Jerusalem and into the pizza store. When she was asked about the children that she murdered, she literally said she was happy. So they asked for these people, but they asked for people like Abdallah Barghouti. 67 life sentences for the 67 people he murdered, including American citizens. Ibrahim Hamid.
In a couple sentences, actually, before I get to my next question, Barghouti is this guy we kind of just heard about in America. Now, I've known about him for a little bit. We keep getting told like he's maybe the next revolutionary or the next guy that they want to put into power, the Palestinian people. Who is he and why him?
So let's differentiate. There's a number of different Barghoutis that are in prison. Abdallah Barghouti, 67 life sentences. The person you're talking about is Marwan Barghouti.
Oh, okay.
Marwan Barghouti was only convicted of 5 murders, including a Greek priest, because he sent the terrorists to murder people, and that's what he did. He was the one who, under Yasser Arafat, was in charge and responsible for igniting and carrying out the entire terror war that we refer to as the Second Intifada. He was the one who led it. He was the one who opened up the Al-Aqsa martyr.
Wait, let me see what the record.
He was the one who started that entire.
Maybe I can just.
Really, fireball that then engulfed thousands of Israelis and thousands of Palestinians as well. A murderer, a convicted murderer. And I always ask the question back to the ostensibly pro-Palestinians. Is there no one else better than that?
Right.
Do you not have someone who is not a convicted mass murderer?
Sure.
Who didn't care whether he was responsible and convicted for killing a Druze Israeli policeman, not a Jew, and a Greek priest.
Right.
Surely there's someone on the Palestinian side who is better than that to lead them forward.
One of the number one questions I've been asking, I still to this day have never gotten an answer in the 5 years I've been doing this, is tell me who is the most, out of all the Palestinian organizations, from Hamas, PIJ, PFLP, DFLP, PRC, Army of Islam, BA/Fatah, whoever, tell me who's the most moderate one. Most of the time they'll default to saying Fatah or, the excuse me, the PA. And then I explain to them the Pay for Slay program and their funding, it goes more into terrorism than it does their education system, which is true. I looked it up. A lot of Americans that support, I say pro-Palestinian, really it's not pro-Palestinian, it's more anti-Israel, which there's a difference. And even some of them are shocked. They're just like, oh, Okay, and I'm like, that's the most moderate. Like that's supposed to be the one that's supposed to push for peace and maybe a two-state solution or whatever. So with the new death sentence law, what do you have to say for a lot of people? The number one criticism that I've heard, even from some maybe more left-wing Israelis, is it's unfair because it only applies to Arabs.
So you're right. That is a criticism that's leveled against the law. And the response, I believe, is relatively simple. The law is designed to deter the terrorists from murdering people, right? When you're talking about a law and deterrence, you look at, well, who are the people that you actually need to deter? When I can go through thousands of names of Palestinians who wantonly murdered Jews and whoever came into their path. None of the critics of Israel can get past maybe 5, 6 names in the last 50 years of Israelis who murdered Palestinians. There have been. There's people like Baruch Goldstein, who obviously a terrible act of terrorism, and that's bad. Who else can they name? They don't know. Because it's not.
I only need Jade up there.
Something that we actually see of Jews going out and murdering Palestine. You have lots of claims in the media. Well, the Jews are doing this and the Jews are doing that, and the violent settlers are always attacking the Palestinians. They're always anonymous claims made by people who never provide any evidence for that. It's all in the media. Israel and the settlers and Israelis and Jews are tried in the media alone. They never provide the actual evidence.
Cropped
No,
videos
it's not.
on social media. I found it interesting. I looked on B'Tselem, not exactly a friendly pro-Israel site, even though they are Israeli. And for those that don't know, you can go into the bottom of their website. I mean, they call it an apartheid regime. It's very much not pro-Israel. And they have this database that they pull from the official sources, supposedly. And it's called the Fatalities Database. And I looked, and you can actually filter it. And I was curious, so I filtered it just by civilian to civilian. No IDF, no Hamas, just no PA security, just Palestinian civilians killing Israeli civilians and vice versa. And I found, even according to B'Tselem, the anti-Israel website, that it was about 9 times the rate that Palestinian civilians murdered Israeli civilians. Again, putting IDF aside, Hamas, all of that aside, just civilians, almost 9 times the rate. And I thought that was interesting because if you look in the media with quote-unquote settler, which I hate that term, it's Jews living in Judea, Samaria, but
an ancestral homeland.
Right, I know, okay, sure. It's a way to dehumanize them, I think, but sure, settler violence. I found it insane because it's like, if you look on the media, you would think it's 1 million Palestinians being killed by settler violence, and it's just nothing happens in the opposite direction. But even according to B'Tselem, it's almost 9 times the rate. We'll get to settler violence in a second, though, because that's a big topic. But with the death penalty, so the policy that was just passed, it doesn't say Arabs only, doesn't use the word Arabs per se. What if an Israeli Arab were to commit an act of terrorism? Would they go to the military court system, or do they go to the civilian court system? How does that work?
Well, so the way that works is that the military court system is there in Judea and Samaria alone. It's for Palestinians because that's a requirement of international law. It goes back to the Fourth Geneva Convention. The people who argue that the Fourth Geneva Convention applies to Judea and Samaria open up the convention, and they'll see there in Article 66 that only non-political military courts can be established in areas such as Judea and Samaria. So that's on the one hand.
Israel's not even the only one that does that. There's many places that follow Geneva Conventions 4. It's funny, they say, well, Israel's occupying, but then you're like, okay, we're going to follow Geneva Conventions 4, and like, whoa, don't do that. And it's like, wait a minute, I thought that's what you're supposed to do.
That's what you say that we're meant to do. This is what you say applies, but when we actually point to that as an application of the law, then suddenly you're up in arms. None of them, I would believe, have ever read Article 68 of the Fourth Geneva Convention, which says you can hand down the death sentence for people who carry out murders.
Really?
It shouldn't apply to minors. Agreed. We don't apply the death sentence, and even the new law doesn't change that. Death sentence won't apply to minors,
So if like a 16-year-old were to commit an act of terrorism, the death sentence doesn't apply to them.
The death sentence doesn't apply.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
But that's a specific provision in the Geneva Convention. I was on a radio interview with the BBC in Ireland, and they had, obviously opposite me, someone arguing international law prohibits the death sentence. I said, like, dude, what law are you reading? Yeah. Have you not opened the Geneva Convention that you say applies? Have you not read this provision? Would you like me to quote it for you verbatim?
So Israel is following international humanitarian law.
I didn't know that, by the way.
Criticized for following what was put in before this.
In 1949, with the agreement of the world that for the act of murder,
I thought
you get the death sentence.
Would make sense for national.
That, but it's what I call the basic law when it comes to Israel.
Sure.
There's one law for the rest of the world, and then there's another law for Israel.
Of course.
The regular law doesn't apply to the Jews. We're exterritorial.
Wow. So, an Israeli Arab with an Israeli citizenship, it makes up about 20-21% of the country. If they were to commit a similar crime, which I can't imagine that would happen, but hypothetically, if they were to do that, how does that work? Do they go to civilian court or the military courts?
All Israeli citizens, whether you're Jewish or Arab or Muslim or Christian, all Israeli citizens are prosecuted in the civilian courts.
Okay, so this isn't just an Arab thing.
It's a very simple provision that Israel's had for many years. Israel's law has universal jurisdiction over Israelis wherever they are Israelis.
Right.
Not Jews, not Arabs, over Israelis wherever they are. And so they would be prosecuted in the civilian courts, and if
civilian court,
and that would be the application of the civilian law to them. And again, as you said, thank God, the number of Israeli Arabs who have been involved in these acts of terrorism, specifically murders, is relatively limited. Can't say that it doesn't happen. You had Fahmy and Ramadan Mashara, two people who held Israeli residency, who were involved in bus bombings. They used their Israeli identity cards in order to smuggle the suicide bomber from Bethlehem into Jerusalem to go and blow up a bus of children. So it does happen. But it's
okay, 7.5K.
The Israeli civilian court system does
Why did I do that?
penalty, and correct me if I'm wrong, but what it is just it's not the default automatically. Is that a good way of putting it?
There is in every part of the new law that was passed discretion, judicial discretion, as to whether the death sentence should be handed down. In no case is it a mandatory requirement. At every stage, the judges, the 3-judge panel, which you would have for a case of murder, has discretion as to whether this is the appropriate case for the death sentence. So it's not even that claim that now everyone is going to get the death sentence simply isn't true. No one bothers to actually read the law. They read TikTok and they read Palestinian bloggers and propagandists. There are 10,000 people now facing the death sentence. You people are idiots, excuse my language. Like, no, the law only applies from today and forward. Have there already been 10,000 Palestinian murderers? And why do you say it applies for Palestinians only? Are you assuming that more Palestinians are going to get up and murder Jews? Maybe the Palestinians have abandoned their desire to murder Jews.
I thought I brought that point up, and when they say, oh, it applies to Palestinians, it's like a little racist of you to automatically hear Palestinian when you hear the word terrorist.
Without question.
Aren't you supposed to be pro-Palestinian? Why are you the one automatically attributing that to them? Okay, so it's not just an Arab thing. It's following IHL, International Humanitarian Law. It's following Geneva Conventions forward. This is something that applies to everyone in the United Nations, but somehow Israel's getting this weird standard applied to them. I actually looked into it because I was curious, and I found a plethora of even Western countries that applied this exact same Article 68 of Geneva Conventions 4 from not even just like old history from World War II, even relatively recently, British, United States, and they applied it to non-citizens. And so it's very interesting how none of that was in the news, but Israel does it, and it's...
So we have to understand that the Geneva Conventions apply to situations of war and what's called occupation and things like that. But many countries have the death sentence. Like in Japan, for example, there is actually a compulsory death sentence for acts of terrorism.
Really?
That cause more. It does exist.
All right.
It is out there, and you know, and
Grainger offers professional-grade products, easy ordering, and next-day delivery, making them the go-to play for everyone keeping arenas game day ready. Call, click, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
when you're talking about the death sentence and you're talking about a judicially sanctioned death sentence in legislation, as part of the fight against terrorism, there are many countries, including the United States, including other Western countries, the UK, Canada, who are involved in targeting.
Big shout out to those that have been supporting me through my Buy Me a Coffee link. I am an independent creator, and I read every single one of your guys' messages. I really appreciate it. And for those that don't go through Buy Me a Coffee, the fact that you're here, you're liking the video, you're subscribing, you're pushing it out, sharing it with your friends and family is more than enough. Thank you so much for supporting the channel.
Osama bin Laden, had he been caught and not killed, and brought to trial in New York, how many people do you think would have actually said, you know what, he murdered 2,000
Not even close enough to next sacrifice.
Injured X amount. You know what? He shouldn't be subject to the death sentence. Where are those people? And where are those people when Barack Obama stood before the nation, stood before the world and said, we have important information. Osama bin Laden has been eliminated.
Wow.
Is that not the death sentence? Even without the trial. Who was complaining? Yes, obviously you have the group of people who say, oh no, it's terrible to kill terrorists. It's terrible to kill Osama bin Laden, this mass murderer. But I think most...
most Americans, I remember.
I would venture to say the most decent Americans will sleep fine at night in the knowledge that Osama bin Laden was killed.
Wow, that's actually a very good point. I remember 9/11. I remember when Obama made that claim. I remember the very next day, I actually, this is before I joined the U.S. Navy, I took my American flag, went onto the Main Street corner where I was living in California, and I waved the American flag. And you're right, 99% of people were just like honking, excited, happy. And that's a good point. How many Americans would, and it wasn't even really due process, right? People are getting upset with Israel because it's after due process, and you're right. I can't imagine many Americans would have been upset if the death sentence was handed down to Osama bin Laden.
Lots of terrorists are eliminated. Qasem Soleimani, the leader of the IRGC, that was eliminated a few. Taking out and this is an important part of understanding both the new law and the war on terrorism. Killing these terrorists actually saves lives. The law that prescribes the death sentence for
I didn't realize that
saves lives because it deters some of them from actually carrying out the death sentence, from carrying out acts of terror.
Right.
People tend to think, well, they're all suicide bombers. They all want to die. That's not true. That's not true. There is a very small group of people who are suicide bombers. They have a death wish. It doesn't matter what you do to them.
Sure.
But then there's this massive group of terrorists who all they want to do is live another day to murder more people. Abdallah Barghouti, 67 life sentences. In court, he says, all I regret is the fact that you arrested me before I could kill more Jews. He's waiting to be released to go and kill more Jews. And he doesn't care whether it's just you. He kills everybody.
Let me do like 5x.
That's maybe something even maybe I need to consider, is that maybe they're not all... I'm sure none of them mind to be martyrs, but maybe that's not always their goal. I know there was Khamenei. I remember there was a video I saw of him to
maybe let's just
to live till like 80 to 90 years old and then become a martyr. So that's a good point. It's not that they mind martyrdom, but maybe you're right. Maybe they want to stay
But this is
alive,
a lot, right?
do more for their cause, and then die.
That much.
That's a good point.
I mean, we talked about people like Marwan Barghouti.
Right.
People maybe go back and look at the videos of his arrest when he comes out of his hiding place, literally in his tidy whities, to make sure that he hasn't got a suicide. He's got no suicide belt on. He has no desire to die. He wants to go into prison. Have all these politicians around the world call him a freedom fighter.
When you go in here, you move.
He doesn't want to die. Maybe
Yeah, what's
he
that?
understood that he would face the death sentence. Maybe then he would want to die. Abbas's side.
I'll check that.
The Seder night, the Passover night feast in Netanya.
Right.
Murdered 29 people. He doesn't want to die either. They want to live on, and the idea that all Israel is going to do is throw us in prison. While we're in prison, we get fed. We get rich because of the Palestinian Authority's pay-for-slave program.
You get tumors removed from your brain.
We get tumors removed from our brain like Yahya Sinwar, the architect of October 7. Why was he in prison? Sure. Yahya Sinwar is an interesting case because it's questionable whether the law would even have applied to him, because Yahya Sinwar, the leader of the uprising, the leader of the October 7,
suddenly a Nazi.
He murdered 4 Palestinians. 4 Palestinians.
He did, right?
It wasn't even Jews. He was the
I don't know.
Khan Yunis.
Let's just
He was the fear of the Palestinians. He was the mafia, murdering people who they believed had like ratted on them to the police.
Right.
let's actually see the
So you have all of these people, and it's
8 million visits. That's not that much.
They do not want to die. It
is a lot.
Assume that every fanatic Muslim terrorist, every fanatic Sunni terrorist actually wants to die. There is that idea.
Sure.
They certainly do have martyrdom. Some of them
Martyr.
they'll go and blow themselves up as human bombs. That is a small category within the thousands of terrorists who just want to live and murder more people.
Wow. One more question about the death penalty.
Let me recovery health.
The rest of Judaism area. What is the purpose of the 90 days? What is that?
So the idea of the 90 days and the limitation on any type of outside discretion once the trial process has finished is to ensure that we neutralize to the greatest extent possible the threat of kidnapping.
Right.
So you've got a terrorist. He's murdered 20 people. He's now sentenced to death. Terrorist organizations, let's go and kidnap a few people, and we'll force the Israeli government to either commute his sentence or to get him released.
Sure.
But if everything is done quickly and there's no outside source that can intervene,
Why is it still active?
the decision is made. It neutralizes.
I need a restart.
To then kidnap people in order to bring about the release of the terrorists. Again, it's that same idea. It's there to save lives. It's not there to say, well, let's take him to death quick as possible. It's there to prevent the terrorists from doing what they do, kidnapping, in order to put pressure on the Israeli government, to put pressure on the US government, whoever it may be.
Sure. So conviction to, is it always the gallows? Is that
how the sentence will actually be carried out is a subject for discussion.
Okay.
There is the gallows. There is a potential or potentially other avenues that also need to be discussed.
Sure.
That's not something which I think is at the moment fine.
Okay, to be determined. So from conviction to death, 90 days.
Yeah.
I think that's very smart. And I think something I try to explain to a lot of Americans is something that...
It's the exhaustion of any type of legal process, and then 90 days. It's not just conviction, because obviously they can appeal to a certain extent.
Okay. Fair enough.
So there is that whole process that's going on. It can't be 20 years on death row like in America.
Right.
But there is an appeals process. It is a possibility. So that also has to be taken into account.
You know, there's even some Americans that are upset when we hear some of these, like you said, death row for 20 years, and we don't even have the context. But this is something I try to explain to a lot of Americans, is that a lot of criticism from Israel is void of all context. And the criticism applies as if Israel is in the United States of America, and we are absolutely great allies, and I love that, and I always advocate because I see Israel as our greatest ally in a lot of measures, one of our greatest allies in other measures, but definitely our most capable ally. And I'm going to mimic what Pete Hegseth said. It's a breath of fresh air, the capability of the Israeli people and the Israeli government and what they do for the United States of America. But a lot of Americans, they forget the context that it's still not the United States of America, and most importantly, it's not the West. It's very easy when you are a big country like the United States of America. Our state of New Jersey is the size of Israel. We have all 49 other states, and we have two very big oceans on each side of us. And our neighbors are Canada and Mexico, two allies. And it's very easy to say, well, why is Israel doing this and that? And with this death penalty law, 90 days, what are they doing? It's very easy to have that thought process when you have the geography of the United States of America, the capability, the military, the money that the United States of America has. Israel doesn't have that. They're surrounded by a lot of enemies who actually see giving an inch as a weakness, right? In America, we do. We sometimes will push for military action just enough to then push for diplomacy. And unfortunately, I have to say so myself, that sometimes the American government then tries to get Israel, and they force Israel to do that, and Israel's never allowed to finish or win wars, it seems like, and it's a little upsetting. And that's the context that people are missing. And so when you see this 90 days of the death penalty and death penalty for terrorists, murderers, some Americans they can't comprehend it, and it's like you're missing the context. If we in America were arresting people, and then we had a terrorist organization that were kidnapping Americans, let's say, God forbid, Mexico, let's say the cartels were coming over the border kidnapping Americans so that way we release their buddies, you bet it that we would have the same exact provision in our law.
Without question.
Yeah.
And for us, it's not only our immediate neighbors that threaten us. We have a whole group of haters around the world who are trying to just murder Jews. One of the very famous terrorist attacks in Israel was the massacre in what used to be the Lod airport before it became Ben Gurion. Kozo Yokomoto, a Japanese terrorist, a communist, who comes to Israel and murders a group of people, most of them Puerto Rican Christians.
Wow.
Like, what are you doing here? Samir Kuntar, a Lebanese guy who comes, infiltrates Israel, murders a family, crushes a baby's head with a rock. What are you doing here? Stephen Smirk, a nice German gentleman. Let's put aside the German history. A nice German history who is now a recruit of Hezbollah as part of his embracing Islam, who gets on a plane from Germany to come to Israel to murder Jews. Like, what are you doing? And like I said, they don't think they're murdering Jews. Taylor Force. There's now the Taylor Force Act, which conditions much of the U.S. aid to the Palestinian Authority on the cancellation of pay for stay. Who is Taylor Force? Taylor Force is an American veteran, an officer, a graduate of West Point, served 3 terms, 2 in Afghanistan, 1 in Iraq, was here from his university, from Vanderbilt, doing his MBA, walking along the promenade in Jaffa, and along comes a terrorist and stabs him to death.
Right.
He's not Jewish. He's not Israeli. Like, what are you people doing?
The amount of Americans that do not know about the Taylor Force Act is insane, or the history.
And they don't know that Taylor Force is literally, he's an American hero who was murdered aimlessly because the terrorist assumed that he was a Jew.
Yeah, that's right.
Because that's terrorism. That's what you're fighting against. So Bashar Masalha, the terrorist who murdered Taylor Force, was killed on the spot. In response, that is self-defense. Who's complaining about that?
Right.
That's the questions that you need to really ask when you're talking about the entirety of the death sentence. What is it there for? Who's it there to deter? Who is it there to punish? And what's the wider context of this isn't against any group of people. It's as a protection for the Jewish people and the Jewish people and anyone perceived to be part of the Jewish people. like Taylor Force. No connection to Jewish people. But if Bashar Masalcha had been captured alive,
sure,
he would have been subject to the death sentence because his goal is to murder Jews.
People love to remove context of Israel. I actually just an hour or two ago, I was on X, and I see Mehdi Hassan. He posts this video. He reposts this video of Moshe Dayan talking about
in 1974.
Yeah, that's the one.
Moshe Dayan.
How they gotta, Israel has to.
I'm gonna stop now. Maybe I'll change to the other game.